Next, hundreds of Pakistanis joined protests across the country this Thursday, including in Kashmir, to raise their disgruntlement regarding Indian threats after a deadly attack on tourists across the contested border. Prime Minister Narendra Modi of India is vowing to pursue and punish the gunmen responsible for killing 26 civilians in a tourist hotspot called Pahalgam on Tuesday, accusing Pakistan of supporting cross-border terrorism. Those are the words that Modi used. The attack in Indian-administered Muslim-majority Kashmir was the deadliest for a quarter of a century and marked a dramatic shift with the targeting of civilians instead of Indian security forces. Now, India has said it will suspend the Indus water treaty, which shares critical water between the two nuclear-armed neighbours, although it has no major means of restricting the river's flow downstream to Pakistan. Let's bring in for a deeper analysis Syed Mohammed Ali from Johns Hopkins University's Global Securities Programme. Good evening to you, sir. I'd be interested to get straight off your take on this current crisis.
Sure. Well, it's a tenuous situation. It's a evolving situation. I mean, it's unfortunately a situation that it's not unique. I mean, there have been recurrent clashes between India and Pakistan. But given the current geostrategic realities, given the sort of, the Hindu majoritarian government in India, given the fact that within Pakistan, the government is not very popular, the military is unpopular. I mean, on both sides, it seems like upping the ante is something that is, that there's momentum for. And unfortunately, then come in a lot of uncertainties. So, I mean, this is a crisis that has been brewing for years. I mean, it's a colonial legacy of the British leaving the Indian subcontinent in a rush. And this matter remains unresolved, since that time, and keeps particularly after the nuclearization of the Indian subcontinent in the late 1990s, it obviously, brings about a lot of anxiety about, where this kind of confrontation might escalate into.
Kashmir, as you say, has been a flashpoint since the British pulled out. There seems to be something happening every year in some way, shape or form, some kind of clash. Can the issues be resolved? Do you see any way forward?
Well, I mean, one of the ways would have been to turn a place like Kashmir into a neutral space where hard borders become redundant on both sides, because Pakistan also, right after the partition in 1948, went and captured a part of this contested territory because it was a Hindu majority princely state with a Hindu Raja who went over to to India, and the formula was that Muslim majority parts come to Pakistan and Hindu majority parts stay with India. So, with that contention, there was a war right in 1948. So Pakistan controls a part of Kashmir as well. And, General Musharraf in the, in the late 1990s, early 2000s, put forth this 4-point formula, which was quite reasonable because it was based on the realization that these nuclear-armed countries cannot take are not positioned to, India being a much larger country, cannot take the Pakistani side of Kashmir, despite all the bluster, and neither can Pakistan, even if it resorts to the use of proxies. There is general disgruntlement and resentment within Kashmir. The Kashmiris are very oppressed. They're like 900,000 troops on the ground. And, this violence that ensues is coming from that place, right? It's not just happening out of the blue. But his 4-point formula was that we keep our territories, no one takes anyone's territory, and you loosen up the borders, demilitarize them, and there could be a flow of people across the borders. And India seemed receptive to that idea at that time, where it was not, as yet an emergent global power, and had lesser sort of, aggressive ambitions within the Indian subcontinent. But then, like domestically, the situation changed. Musharraf became weaker, and that formula sort of went sideways. And in now 2019, on the back of like this renewed mandate that this ultra-majoritarian, ultra-nationalist majoritarian leader, Prime Minister Modi, when he came to power, he revoked the special status of Kashmir in 2019, following which we saw a very serious incident in Pulwama in Kashmir in 2019, where it led to cross-border violations on both sides, airplanes going into each other's space, and the countries walked back from that crisis, luckily. But if there is actually, if there's a movement of troops or there's like border skirmishes, there's been a ceasefire on since 2022, and that ceasefire, if that ceasefire goes, then, the situation can escalate beyond these current diplomatic and tokenistic measures. But they are, one is already seeing signs of that.
It sounds like it is a very delicate situation, Syed. I'm sorry to cut across you. It sounds too like you were saying that Narendra Modi has a certain amount of blame to be put on his shoulders over this. Nonetheless, no one's condoning the killing of people, and that's what has happened. 26 tourists killed, mostly Indian nationals. Can you tell us anything about the group that's claimed responsibility? What are their aims and objectives, and who's funding them?
Well, it's a fairly new group, and India is saying that Pakistan is behind this. But this kind of finger pointing, Pakistan says that the Taliban in Pakistan and the Baloch problem are being fueled by India, and whatever happens in Kashmir is Pakistan's fault. And I think that while there might be some truth on both sides, these are also restive areas. These are areas where the state has been hegemonic, where it has been exploiting the resources on the Indian side and the Pakistani side. So, the most convenient thing is, to put all of that aside and just blame the enemy next door. And that's what is happening right now. And, with this label of sort of terrorism being fueled by Pakistan, it becomes a convenient way. And even the international community is very sort of sympathetic to India. But if one looks at the human rights violations that have been taking place in India for years, especially after revocation of Article 2019, these are very oppressed, heavily oppressed people. But of course, that doesn't justify attacking civilians in Kashmir. The last time around in 2019, it was hard targets. And again, India was saying that saber rattling and saying terror, using this word of terrorism, which is often used by states to quash any form of dissent. So, of course, one is not, an apologist for the loss of, particularly of civilian life at all, but it's not coming out of nowhere.
So Modi is promising justice. The problem will probably be that his idea of justice doesn't equate to what Pakistan's idea of justice will be. In the middle of all this, there's a water treaty which could be very important to what happens next. Can you tell us about this Indus water treaty?
Well, it was brokered by the World Bank in the early 60s when Pakistan was, had a much better relationship with the US. And the geography of the region is both countries share a trans-border river system, coming out of the Himalayan glaciers in Tibet, in Chinese-held Tibet, and it comes through India into Pakistan. So the treaty, not a very sophisticated treaty, given now glacial melts and climate change and all of that, but nonetheless, it was a treaty that persevered, through all the tensions that Pakistan and India experienced, and it bifurcates the rivers of the Indus. So India gets the 3 eastern rivers and Pakistan gets the 3 western rivers, which have the bulk of the water. And Pakistan's agriculture is primarily dependent on those rivers. Now, India is saying that it wants to scrape the treaty. It won't be that easy because there isn't a clause for unilateral, sort of removal of India from this treaty. The geography of the area is also such that it'll be difficult for India to put in place infrastructure that can actually impede water coming into Pakistan. And India has already informed Pakistan earlier earlier this year that it wanted to, renegotiate the treaty. But that is not an issue that's going to, have immediate implications. But it remains an issue of concern given that both countries have increasing water demand or experiencing increasing water scarcity. And if India does try to, divert some of the water from the western rivers, that will certainly be felt by Pakistan. Pakistan said that will be considered an act of war. But it's not something that can be done. They can't just turn the taps off, if you will, all of a sudden.
Another potential flashpoint in an already very difficult situation. Syed Mohammed Ali, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Syed Mohammed Ali is from the Johns Hopkins University's Global Securities Programme. Thank you, sir, for sharing your analysis of the situation.